My name is Claire, and at 26 years old, I never expected to be uninvited from my own family Christmas. I had built a successful career and my own life, but still craved that family acceptance. When my mom left that voicemail saying I wasn't welcome anymore, something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I remembered all the accounts I still had access to from helping them last year. Their mortgage, utilities, even the expensive holiday catering deposit. With a few clicks, I froze everything. If I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner, I wasn't family enough to pay their bills. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear how my family reacted when their perfect Christmas went dark. Growing up in the Bennett household, I always felt like I existed in the shadows. My older brother, Lucas, 30, was the athletic golden boy who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. My sister, Sophia, 28, was the social butterfly and my mother's mini-me. Then there was me, Claire, always trying to carve out my own place in a family that seemed to have assigned all the important roles before I was born. My parents, Michael and Elizabeth Bennett, had high expectations for all their children, but somehow those expectations manifested differently for each of us. Lucas could bring home a C in math, and my dad would say, "At least you scored the winning touchdown on Friday." Sophia could skip piano practice for a month, but it was fine because she was building important social connections. When I brought home straight A's, the response was usually, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation shifted back to Lucas's latest sports achievement or Sophia's social calendar. I remember one specific incident when I was 12. I'd been practicing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major for months for my piano recital. The day finally arrived, and I sat on the stage in my carefully selected dress, scanning the audience for my family's faces as I prepared to play. They weren't there, not a single one. I performed anyway, earning a standing ovation from strangers while fighting back tears. When I got home, I found my family gathered around the TV watching Lucas's football game. My mom barely looked up when I walked in. "How was your little concert, sweetie? Lucas just scored his second touchdown." My high school graduation was another painful memory. Sophia had graduated a year earlier, and my parents threw her an extravagant party with nearly 100 guests, custom decorations, catered food, and even a professional photographer. For my graduation, we had a quiet dinner at Olive Garden. My dad explained that they couldn't afford another big party so soon after Sophia's. I later found out they'd spent $3,000 that same month on new golf clubs for Lucas. Despite all this, I still loved my family and desperately wanted their approval. Maybe that's why I was always the first to offer help when they needed it. In 2018, my parents faced serious financial trouble when my dad was temporarily laid off from his management position. I had just started my career in financial technology and was making decent money. Not wealthy, but stable. When my parents mentioned they might miss a mortgage payment, I immediately offered to help. "It's just until your father gets back on his feet," my mother assured me as I wrote them a check for $15,000. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can." That money was never repaid, not even mentioned again after the initial thank you. It became an unspoken family secret, like so many other inequities in our household. I told myself it was fine. That's what family does for each other, right? Christmas was always the biggest event in the Bennett household. My mother prided herself on hosting the perfect holiday gathering. Our two-story suburban home in Raleigh, North Carolina, would transform into a winter wonderland with garlands wrapped around the staircase, stockings hung meticulously on the fireplace, and a 12-foot tree adorned with ornaments collected over decades. Extended family would travel from several states away to attend the Bennett Family Christmas Extravaganza, as my mother had dubbed it. Every year since I started working, I contributed significantly to these festivities. Last Christmas, I paid for the entire catering service, which cost over $8,000. The year before that, I bought the new artificial tree after my mother complained that the old one looked shabby in photos. I purchased gifts for everyone, including distant cousins I barely knew. My total Christmas spending typically exceeded $10,000, while Lucas usually showed up with token gifts of scented candles, and Sophia often gave handmade coupons for quality time together. Yet somehow, in all the family photos, I always ended up positioned in the back or off to the side. In my mother's annual Christmas newsletter, my accomplishments warranted a single sentence, while Lucas and Sophia's lives filled paragraphs. I kept telling myself that eventually they'd see me, truly see me. That one day I'd earn enough success, or give enough support, that they'd finally grant me the same love and recognition they so freely gave my siblings. I was building a life around earning the approval of people who seemed constitutionally incapable of giving it to me. But old patterns are hard to break, and the desire for parental love runs deep. So, I continued to show up, contribute, and hope for something different. Even as evidence mounted that the family dynamic was unlikely to change, I just couldn't see it yet. Despite my parents' lack of encouragement, or perhaps because of it, I threw myself into building a career that would make me financially independent. While my family pushed me toward teaching, such a suitable career for a woman, Claire, I pursued my interest in financial technology instead. I worked 60-hour weeks, took online courses at night to expand my skill set, and sacrificed my social life in those early years to climb the corporate ladder. The hard work paid off. By 24, I had been promoted to Director of Product Development at one of the leading fintech companies in Seattle, Washington. My salary had tripled since my entry-level position, and I was managing a team of 15 talented developers. The irony wasn't lost on me that I had become the financial wizard in a family that had never supported my career choice. At 23, I purchased my own apartment in a desirable neighborhood in Seattle. Nothing extravagant, just a one-bedroom with updated appliances and a small balcony where I could drink my morning coffee. But it was mine, bought with money I had earned. The day I got my keys, I called my parents, hoping they'd share my excitement. "That's nice, dear," my mother said after my announcement. "But you know, owning is such a responsibility. Are you sure you're ready for that? And that neighborhood is so far from us." "I think it's great, Claire," my dad added, though. "I hope you didn't overextend yourself. You know what they say about counting your chickens before they hatch." Neither of them asked to see the place until 3 months later, and when they finally visited, my mother spent most of the time pointing out things that needed improvement. Meanwhile, they had helped Sophia with the down payment on her much larger house in Charlotte, North Carolina, despite her sporadic employment history. While my career flourished, Lucas and Sophia struggled. Lucas had tried to start his own sporting goods business after college, but lacked the business acumen to make it successful. After its failure, he bounced between sales jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a year. Sophia had an art history degree but had never found a career path that spoke to her soul, as she put it. She worked retail jobs between long stretches of unemployment, during which my parents subsidized her lifestyle. Yet somehow their financial instability was framed as them being free spirits, or finding their path, while my stability was often characterized as playing it safe or being boring. The requests for financial help increased as my income grew. When my parents' roof needed repairs, my phone rang. "Claire, the estimate is $4,500. Your father and I just don't have that kind of money right now. Could you help us out? You know how well the house holds its value." When Lucas's car broke down, "Your brother really needs reliable transportation for job interviews. The mechanic says it's $3,200. You wouldn't want him to miss out on opportunities, would you? When Sophia needed emergency dental surgery not covered by insurance, $7,800, that's what your sister makes in 3 months. But you could write a check for that amount without even feeling it, could you, Claire? In 2019, after helping my parents navigate a particularly complicated tax situation, they gave me access to several of their financial accounts. "You're so good with money," my mother had said. "It would be such a help if you could keep an eye on things for us." I agreed, setting up automatic payments for their mortgage and utilities through my own accounts. It seemed like the least I could do, and for once, they were acknowledging my expertise in something. Then I met Ryan. He taught high school history and coached the debate team at a public school in downtown Seattle. We connected at a fundraising event for education that my company was sponsoring. Ryan was intelligent, compassionate, and completely unimpressed by material status symbols. He valued my mind over my money, my character over my career achievements. For the first time, I felt truly seen for who I was, not for what I could provide. When I introduced Ryan to my family 6 months into our relationship, their response was predictably underwhelming. "A teacher," my mother whispered to me in the kitchen while Ryan chatted with my dad in the living room. "Claire, you could do so much better. Don't you meet any successful men in your industry?" "He seems nice enough," my father commented later. "But I hope you're being practical. Teachers don't exactly make the kind of money you're used to. You'll end up supporting him." Lucas was even less subtle. "Dude, how do you afford to date my sister?" he asked Ryan directly over dinner, laughing as though it were a joke. "She probably spends more on shoes than you make in a month." Only Sophia showed any genuine warmth toward Ryan, perhaps because he showed interest in her artwork and asked thoughtful questions about her creative process. But even she later texted me, "He's cute but kind of basic, isn't he? I thought you'd end up with someone more impressive." As my relationship with Ryan deepened and my career continued to advance, I noticed a shift in my family's attitude toward me. The requests for financial help continued, but they were now couched in barely disguised resentment. Comments like, "Well, we can't all be corporate success stories," and "must be nice to have so much disposable income," became common at family gatherings. My mother began introducing me to relatives as "our Claire, who's doing very well for herself," in a tone that somehow made my success sound like a character flaw. My father would ask about my work only to interrupt with stories about people he knew who burned out from high-stress jobs or companies that went under without warning. "You always think you're better than everyone else," Lucas told me bluntly after I'd refused to loan him money for a sketchy cryptocurrency investment. "Just because you wear fancy clothes and have a big title doesn't mean you're smarter than the rest of us. Money can't buy happiness, you know," Sophia would say whenever I mentioned any purchase I'd made, regardless of how practical or modest it might be. This from the sister whose rent I'd paid 3 times in the past year when she was between opportunities. The contrast between my family environment and my relationship with Ryan couldn't have been starker. With him, I felt valued and respected. With them, I felt like an ATM with inconvenient opinions attached. But they were still my family, and I kept trying to maintain the relationship, setting boundaries where I could, and disengaging when the criticism became too pointed. "They just don't know how to relate to your success," Ryan suggested one night after a particularly tense family dinner. "It's easier to tear you down than to acknowledge that maybe they made some poor choices." I knew he was right, but understanding the psychology didn't make it hurt any less. Every dismissive comment, every backhanded compliment, every comparison that subtly favored my siblings chipped away at my sense of belonging. Still, I persisted in hoping that eventually they'd come around, that one day my achievements would be a source of family pride rather than familial discomfort. I had no idea then just how drastically things would change, or that a single voicemail would finally force me to see what I'd been avoiding for years. After 2 years of dating, Ryan proposed on a random Tuesday evening. We were at our favorite Italian restaurant in Portland, Oregon, the small family-owned place where we'd had our first date. There was no elaborate setup, no photographer hiding in the bushes, just Ryan getting down on one knee beside our table after tiramisu and asking if I would spend my life with him. It was perfect, because it was genuine, just like him. The vintage emerald ring had belonged to his grandmother. She was a teacher too, he told me as he slipped it on my finger. Strong, smart, and never afraid to stand up for what mattered. Just like you. I was ecstatic. For once, I had found someone who valued me completely, who wanted to build a future with me based on love and mutual respect, rather than what I could provide. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family, naive as that may sound given our history. Some part of me still believed that they would be happy for me, that they'd welcome Ryan into the fold and finally see what I had been trying to tell them for years. I organized a special dinner at my apartment to announce our engagement. I spent all day cooking my father's favorite beef bourguignon, my mother's preferred chocolate soufflé, and even made Sophia's special dietary restrictions work with carefully prepared side dishes. Ryan brought flowers and a nice bottle of champagne. I wanted everything to be perfect. Their reaction was exactly what I should have expected, but somehow still caught me by surprise. Engaged? Don't you think that's a bit rushed? My mother said, examining my ring with pursed lips. This looks quite old. Family heirloom, I suppose. 2 years is hardly rushed, Mom, I replied, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. And yes, it was his grandmother's. Isn't it beautiful? It's unique, she said in a tone that clearly meant inadequate. I just wonder if you've really thought this through, Claire. Marriage is a serious commitment. My father cleared his throat. Ryan, I respect your profession, I really do. But have you considered how you'll provide for my daughter? She's used to a certain lifestyle. Actually, sir, Ryan responded calmly, Claire and I have had many discussions about our finances and future plans. We're on the same page. I'm sure you are now, my father persisted. But what about when children come along? Private schools aren't cheap. Dad, we're not even discussing children yet, I interjected. And when we do, those decisions will be ours to make. Sophia at least tried to seem supportive, though her comment of, well, I guess when you know, lacked genuine enthusiasm. Lucas didn't even pretend, rolling his eyes when he saw the ring and asking if we'd considered a prenup given the income disparity. The evening deteriorated from there, with my engagement news quickly sidelined for updates on Lucas's life. He dropped the bombshell that he and his wife, Megan, were separating after 5 years of marriage. She just doesn't understand the pressure I'm under, Lucas explained, helping himself to another large glass of the champagne Ryan had brought to celebrate our engagement. Always complaining that I'm not making enough money or that I need to be more ambitious. Not everyone can be lucky enough to fall into a high-paying job like Claire. I bit my tongue at the suggestion that my career success had been a matter of luck rather than years of hard work and sacrifice. This wasn't the time to defend myself, not when my brother was clearly in pain. So instead, I listened as Lucas dominated the conversation for the next hour, detailing his marital problems and increasingly dire financial situation. It turned out that Lucas had accumulated over $45,000 in credit card debt, much of it hidden from Megan. His sporadic employment had left them behind on their mortgage payments, and the bank was threatening foreclosure. My parents clucked sympathetically, assuring Lucas that these things happen and that Megan should have been more understanding about money troubles. I noticed they never mentioned the financial advice I'd offered Lucas multiple times over the years, which he'd dismissed as boring sister lecturing. I also noticed how they kept glancing my way during the conversation, as though measuring my reaction. At the time, I didn't understand the significance of those looks. 2 weeks later, I discovered why. I'd stopped by my parents' house unannounced on a Sunday afternoon, bringing some gardening magazines for my mother. As I approached the front door, I could hear raised voices inside. I hesitated, then used my key to let myself in quietly. In the living room sat my parents, Lucas, Sophia, and my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. They fell silent when I walked in, exchanging guilty looks that made it immediately clear they'd been discussing me. "Claire, we weren't expecting you today," my mother said with forced brightness. "Obviously," I replied, looking around at their uncomfortable faces. "What's going on?" After an awkward silence, my father sighed. "We were discussing family matters, Claire. Lucas is in a difficult position with the house situation." "Yes, he mentioned that at dinner," I said. "Has something changed?" Another exchange of looks before my mother spoke. "Well, dear, we were thinking about solutions. You know, the family always pulls together in times of need." The implication hung in the air. I waited for someone to actually say it out loud. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. "Look, Claire, you've got all this money saved for your wedding, and it's not like Ryan can't afford a nice ring already. I mean, my entire house is on the line here. My kids could lose their home." I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you actually suggesting I give you my wedding savings?" "Not give," my mother corrected quickly. "Just loan, until Lucas gets back on his feet." "It's $35,000, I said slowly. "We've been saving for over a year." "And that's wonderful that you can save so much," my father interjected. "Most people aren't so fortunate, but family has to come first, Claire." I took a deep breath, trying to process what was happening. "I can help with some money," I offered finally. "Maybe $10,000, but I can't give up our entire wedding fund. That's not fair to ask." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Not fair?" My father stood up, his voice rising. "What's not fair is watching your brother lose everything while you sit on a pile of money for some party." "It's not just some party, Dad. It's my wedding, and I've worked hard for that money." "So selfish," Sophia muttered, shaking her head. "You've never really known how to put family first." "That's not true," I protested, feeling the familiar sting of their disapproval. "I've helped all of you numerous times, but there have to be limits." Lucas pushed himself up from the couch and grabbed his jacket. "Forget it," he said bitterly. "I shouldn't have expected anything different. Miss Corporate Success is too good for her family's problems. Enjoy your fancy wedding while my kids and I move into an apartment." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. My Aunt Margaret awkwardly excused herself to the kitchen, leaving me facing my parents and sister. "I hope you're satisfied," my mother said coldly. "Your brother needed you, and you chose a party over his well-being." "That's not what happened, and you know it," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I've offered to help, just not at the expense of my entire future with Ryan." "Ryan," my father repeated with a dismissive wave. "The man can't even support himself properly, let alone you. You think he's with you for your sparkling personality, Claire? Wake up." That was the breaking point. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "I'm leaving before we say things we can't take back." I offered to help Lucas with $10,000, which is more than generous. The offer stands, but I'm not discussing this further today. As the weeks passed, I learned that my family had been busy spreading their version of events to the extended family. Cousins who had always been friendly became distant in text exchanges. My mother's sister called to check in on me with pointed questions about my priorities. Even my normally neutral grandparents sent an email expressing their disappointment that I wasn't stepping up for Lucas in his time of need. I tried to explain my side, sending a long, heartfelt email to my family, detailing how I had always supported them financially, how I was still offering substantial help to Lucas, and how hurtful it was to be characterized as selfish for not sacrificing my entire wedding fund. I received no responses, just deafening silence. Ryan was furious when I told him what had happened. "They have no right to make you feel this way," he said, holding me as I finally broke down in tears. "You've done nothing but support them for years. There has to be a limit, Claire. You can't set yourself on fire to keep them warm forever." I knew he was right, but breaking lifelong patterns is never easy. I made one final attempt at reconciliation, inviting my parents to dinner at a neutral location, a restaurant in Durham, North Carolina, where we could talk calmly. They declined, my mother citing a scheduling conflict. I later saw photos on social media of them at a neighbor's barbecue that same evening. It was becoming painfully clear that I'd been cast in the role of family villain, and nothing I said or did was going to change that narrative. At least, not yet. I had no idea that the real breaking point was still to come, or that a single voicemail would finally push me to take action in a way that would change our family dynamic forever. It was a crisp December morning, just 3 weeks before Christmas. I was at my office in Seattle finalizing some year-end reports and thinking about the holiday season ahead. Ryan and I had decided to host a small Christmas Eve dinner at my apartment for a few close friends, since my family interactions had been frigid at best since the confrontation over Lucas's finances. I still held out hope that the holiday spirit might soften my family's stance. Perhaps time and distance had given them perspective. Maybe they'd realize that family support should go both ways, that love shouldn't be contingent on financial assistance. I hadn't received an official invitation to the annual Bennett family Christmas extravaganza, but I assumed it was an oversight. After all, I'd never needed an invitation before. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification during a meeting. I couldn't check it until lunch, when I finally had a moment alone. What I heard changed everything. My mother's voice, cool and detached. "Claire, calling to let you know that we've all agreed you're not welcome at Christmas this year. You've made it clear that you don't consider us family anymore. You can keep your money and spend the time with Ryan, since that's obviously what you want. Don't contact us until you've realized what family really means." I played the message 3 times, my hands shaking more with each replay, the coldness in her voice, the casual cruelty of the words. "We've all agreed," as though they'd taken a vote on my membership in the family, and I'd lost unanimously. I tried calling my mother back immediately. No answer. I called my father. Straight to voicemail. I even tried Lucas and Sophia. Nothing. It was as if they'd all coordinated a complete communication blackout. When Ryan found me that evening, I was sitting on my couch in the dark, still in my work clothes, staring at my silent phone. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, sensing my distress. I wordlessly played the voicemail for him. His expression shifted from concern to disbelief to anger as my mother's words filled the room. That's beyond cruel," he finally said. "I'm so sorry, Claire." 13 years, I whispered. 13 years I've been financially supporting them in one way or another. I've never missed a Christmas, never failed to show up when they needed me, and now I'm just voted out because I wouldn't give Lucas my entire wedding fund. Ryan sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. "This isn't about the money," he said gently. "Not really. It's about control. You've established independence, found happiness outside their approval system. Some families can't handle that." I nodded against his shoulder, too emotionally exhausted to cry. "What should we do about Christmas?" I asked eventually. "We've already planned a beautiful evening with friends who actually care about us," he reminded me. And I was thinking, my cousin's renting out a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains for the week after Christmas. She said we'd be welcome to join. Fresh air, snow, board games by the fire, a complete change of scenery. It sounded perfect. A way to create new holiday memories untainted by family drama. I agreed, and for a moment, I felt a weight lift. We made hot chocolate and started looking at cabin photos online, purposely, distracting ourselves from the pain of my mother's voicemail. But the next morning, the reality hit me all over again. Out of habit, I checked my sister's Facebook page and saw a post that twisted the knife. "Finalizing our Christmas guest list. Can't wait for the most perfect Bennett family Christmas yet. Feeling blessed with the real family members who know what loyalty means." The comments section was filled with relatives responding enthusiastically, several making thinly veiled references to drama-free holidays and not missing those who don't appreciate family. My cousin Rachel, my closest childhood friend, had written, "So looking forward to it. Some people just don't deserve to be included." 26 likes on that comment, including from my mother and father. Almost worse was discovering I was still in the family group chat, though no one had addressed me directly in weeks. Scrolling back through recent messages, I found them openly discussing Christmas plans, assigning dishes for people to bring, coordinating arrival times. My name was conspicuously absent from all planning. Lucas had written, "Mom's holiday ham is worth more than $35,000 any day. Some people will never understand what really matters." My father had replied with a laughing emoji and, in truth, it was surreal seeing them carry on as if I didn't exist. Or worse, as if I'd done something truly unforgivable. All because I'd refused to bankrupt my future to solve my brother's self-created financial crisis. That evening, a thought occurred to me. I still had access to several of my parents' financial accounts. I'd set up their online banking and bill pay systems myself, created their passwords, linked their accounts. They had never bothered to learn how it all worked, happy to let me handle the technical details. Out of curiosity, I logged in to see if anything had changed. Nothing had. I could still see every transaction, still had full access to their mortgage payments, utility bills, and credit cards. And what I saw made my blood boil. While pleading poverty and pressuring me to give Lucas my wedding fund, they'd made some interesting purchases. A $2,730 mortgage payment processed smoothly, a $450 electric bill, higher than usual due to my mother's excessive Christmas light display, a $380 gas bill, and, most tellingly, a $9,000 deposit to an upscale catering company in Raleigh for their Christmas Eve dinner party. $9,000 for one dinner, while telling me that family members should sacrifice for each other. I sat staring at the screen, a strange calm replacing my earlier hurt. They had made their position crystal clear. I was family when they needed my money, my technical help, my professional expertise. I was family when it was time to contribute to holiday expenses or bail out my siblings. But I wasn't family when I set a reasonable boundary or wanted recognition for my contributions. Called Ryan, who listened patiently as I detailed everything I'd discovered. "What are you thinking?" he asked when I finished. "I'm thinking it's time I stopped trying to buy my way into their approval," I said slowly. "I'm thinking that if I'm not family enough to be invited to Christmas, then I'm not family enough to be paying their bills." "Are you sure about this?" His voice was concerned, but not judgmental. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you, but you need to be prepared for the fallout." Was I sure? I thought about 13 years of one-way financial support. I thought about my mother's cold voicemail. I thought about my family's casual cruelty in excluding me from a holiday I'd helped fund for years. I thought about being labeled selfish for not sacrificing my future while they spent thousands on a single dinner party. Yes, I said finally. I'm sure. It's time to establish some real boundaries. I didn't make the decision lightly. I spent hours that night weighing my options, considering the consequences, and examining my own motivations. Was this about revenge? No, not really. It was about finally standing up for myself, about refusing to be used and discarded based on their financial needs. It was about showing them that their actions had consequences, that relationships require mutual respect. By morning, my path was clear. If they wanted to exclude me from the family, they would need to learn what that really meant. All of it. I approached the situation methodically, just as I would a project at work. This wasn't about impulsive revenge. It was about deliberately establishing boundaries with people who had taken advantage of me for years. With a clear mind and steady hands, I began the process of detaching myself financially from my family. First, I called the mortgage company. I'm concerned about some unusual activity on this account, I explained, using the authorized user status I'd been given years ago. I'd like to temporarily freeze any transactions until I can verify everything is in order. The representative was helpful, especially when I mentioned potential fraud concerns. They placed a 72-hour hold on the account, which would conveniently span Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. The mortgage payment scheduled to process on December 24th would be declined. Next came the utility companies. I had set up all these payments on my credit card years ago when my parents were struggling. They had never bothered to change the arrangement, even after their financial situation improved. I simply reported my card as lost, automatically invalidating all the scheduled payments. A new card would be issued, but not in time for the holiday bills. Finally, the catering company. This required a bit more finesse. I called, posing as my mother, whose voice I could mimic convincingly after years of practice. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Bennett. I'm calling about the catering order for December 24th. Of course, Mrs. Bennett. Your deposit of $9,000 has been processed and everything is on schedule. Did you want to make any changes to the menu? Actually, I'm afraid we need to cancel the order. Cancel? But Mrs. Bennett, Christmas Eve is less than a week away. Our cancellation policy states that so close to the event, we can only refund 50% of your deposit. I understand, I replied smoothly. Family emergency. Completely unavoidable. Please process whatever refund is appropriate and cancel the service. After confirming a few security details, the order was canceled. $4,500 would be returned to my parents' credit card, while the rest was forfeit due to the late notice. An expensive lesson, but one they could afford given what I'd seen in their accounts. With the practical matters handled, I composed a formal email to my parents. No emotional appeals, no detailed explanations of my hurt feelings, just a clear, businesslike statement. I have discovered that the accounts I have access to are still being used regularly. As I am no longer welcome in the family, as per the voicemail I received, I no longer have any financial responsibility for family expenses. I have frozen access to all accounts under my purview. Please make alternative arrangements for your mortgage, utilities, and holiday catering. Claire. I sent similar texts to Lucas and Sophia, letting them know that I'd removed myself from all family financial matters and would not be available to help with any monetary emergencies over the holidays. I then muted all their contacts and turned off my social media notifications. Whatever storm was coming, I wanted to be prepared on my own terms. Ryan came over that evening, concerned about my emotional state after taking such definitive action. "Are you okay?" he asked, studying my face carefully. Surprisingly, yes, I answered truthfully. For the first time in years, I feel like I've stopped participating in my own mistreatment. It's liberating. What do you think will happen when they discover what you've done? I shrugged. They'll be angry. They'll call me selfish and vindictive. They'll probably tell everyone in the extended family that I've proven what a terrible person I am. But you know what? I'm starting to realize their opinion of me was never based on my actual character or actions. It was always about what I could do for them. And you're prepared for the backlash? As prepared as I can be, I said. Besides, we've got our own Christmas to focus on. Sarah, David, and Emma are coming for dinner on Christmas Eve. You said your cousin still has room for us at the cabin. I'm choosing to prioritize people who actually value me. Ryan pulled me into a hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Christmas Eve arrived, bright and cold. While I prepared for our small dinner party, I couldn't help imagining the scene at my parents' house in Raleigh. I pictured the timeline in my head. 6 p.m. My mother would be in full hosting mode, directing my father on where to place the extra chairs, fussing with the table settings, checking on the oven timers. The doorbell would ring, and the first relatives would arrive, bearing gifts and side dishes. The house would be warm and bright, Christmas music playing through the speakers I'd installed for them last year. Then, without warning, the house would go dark. The heating would stop. The electric oven would power down mid-cook. My mother would immediately blame my father for forgetting to pay the bill, while he would insist he had scheduled the payment, just like Claire showed us. 7 p.m. With the house growing colder and dinner preparations halted, they'd realize the caterers had not arrived. Frantic phone calls would reveal that their expensive holiday feast had been canceled days ago. My mother, always obsessed with appearances, would be mortified in front of the gathering relatives. 8 p.m. Desperate attempts to salvage the evening would lead to credit card declines as they tried to order last-minute takeout for 20 people on Christmas Eve. My father would discover the mortgage payment had also been flagged, triggering automated alerts from the bank. 9 p.m. The initially sympathetic relatives would grow hungry and uncomfortable in the cold house. Some would make excuses and leave early. Others would stay but whisper among themselves about the Bennett family's financial troubles. My mother's perfect Christmas image would be crumbling by the minute. 10 p.m. Finally, someone would make the connection. Perhaps my mother would check her email and find my message, or Lucas would receive my text and tell them. The realization would dawn that I had orchestrated this holiday chaos from afar. I wasn't proud of the disruption I was causing, but I did feel a sense of justice. For years, they'd happily accepted my financial support while treating me as an afterthought. Now, they would experience the holiday without my invisible subsidies. It seemed like a fitting consequence for the years of emotional manipulation and the final insult of uninviting me from the family Christmas. Meanwhile, our own Christmas Eve dinner was lovely. Sarah brought her famous apple pie, David mixed holiday cocktails, and Emma arrived with an armful of poinsettias for decoration. Ryan prepared his grandmother's special stuffing recipe, and I roasted a small turkey. We ate, drank, exchanged modest but thoughtful gifts, and played board games until midnight. Not once did I check my phone. I had made a decision to be fully present with the people who chose to be in my life, who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. It was the most relaxed Christmas Eve I'd experienced in years. Christmas morning dawned with snow falling gently outside my bedroom window. Ryan had stayed over, and we enjoyed a lazy breakfast in pajamas, opening a few small gifts we'd saved for the morning. Around 7 a.m., I finally decided to check my phone. The screen was filled with notifications, 18 missed calls, 36 text messages, 4 voicemails. They had started coming in around 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve and continued through the night. From my father. "What the hell have you done with our accounts? Call me back immediately." From my mother. "Claire Marie Bennett, you cannot do this to your family. You've ruined Christmas. Call me this instant." From Lucas. "I always knew you were a selfish. Call mom back now." From Sophia. "The whole family is freaking out because of you. Are you happy now?" The voicemails were increasingly frantic, with my mother actually crying in the last one, saying that relatives had left hungry, the house was freezing, and they had been humiliated in front of everyone. I showed the messages to Ryan, who read them with raised eyebrows. "Funny how quickly you became family again when they needed your financial help," he observed. I nodded, turning the phone face down on the table. "I'm not ready to deal with them yet. Today is our Christmas. They can wait." And they did wait as we enjoyed our quiet Christmas day together, exchanging gifts, watching classic holiday movies, and planning our upcoming trip to the mountain cabin. The day after Christmas, I decided it was time to face the music. Ryan had gone home to pack for our cabin trip, and I sat alone in my apartment, gathering my courage before turning my phone back on. As expected, the notifications continued to pour in. What surprised me was a text from my mother, sent just an hour ago, with a markedly different tone. "Claire, we need to talk. Please call when you're ready. I think we owe you a conversation." No demands, no accusations, just an acknowledgement that we needed to talk. It was the closest thing to reasonable communication I'd received from my family in months. I decided to respond, but on my terms. I called my parents' home phone, putting it on speaker so I could pace around my living room while we talked. My father answered on the first ring. "Claire, finally. What the hell were you thinking? Do you have any idea what you've done?" So much for the new tone, I thought. "Hello to you too, Dad," I replied calmly. "Yes, I know exactly what I did. I removed my financial support from people who explicitly told me I wasn't family anymore." "That's not what your mother meant," he said. "Really? We've all agreed you're not welcome at Christmas." Those were her exact words, Dad. What else could that possibly mean? I heard my mother in the background saying something I couldn't make out. Then she came on the line. "Claire, we were just very disappointed about your refusal to help your brother," she said, her voice strained but controlled. "We never meant for things to go this far." "I offered to help Lucas with $10,000, I reminded her. "That wasn't good enough for you. You wanted me to give up my entire wedding fund. When I refused, you decided I wasn't worthy of being included in Christmas. Actions have consequences, Mom." "So, you deliberately sabotaged our holiday," she said. "The house was freezing, the food was canceled, people left." "Again, consequences," I said firmly. "For years, I've financially supported family events while being treated as an afterthought. You decided I wasn't family anymore, so I stopped acting like family. That means no more paying your bills or subsidizing your lifestyle." I heard Lucas's voice suddenly. Apparently, I was on speakerphone at their end as well. "You vindictive little—" "Lucas," I cut him off. "This conversation doesn't concern you. This is between me and our parents." "The hell it doesn't," he retorted. "You embarrassed all of us in front of the entire family. Aunt Margaret is still talking about how we couldn't even keep the lights on." "I'm curious," I replied, keeping my voice level. "When you were all voting me out of Christmas, did anyone consider how that might embarrass me? Did anyone think about how it would feel to be explicitly uninvited from my own family holiday after years of contributing to it?" Silence greeted my question. "I didn't think so," I continued. "You know what's interesting? Not one of you has asked how my Christmas was, whether I was alone or sad or hurt. You're only concerned with how my actions affected you, not how your actions affected me. I heard Sophia join the conversation. We didn't think you'd care that much, honestly. You have Ryan and your fancy job and your perfect life. You don't need family Christmas like the rest of us do. The comment was so revealing that I actually laughed. That's what you think? That I don't need family because I have a career and a supportive partner? Do you have any idea how much I've longed for your approval all these years? How much it hurt to be constantly compared to Lucas and Sophia and found wanting, despite all my successes. We've never done that, my mother protested weakly. You've never done anything but that, I countered. Let me show you something. I put them on mute while I pulled up my archived emails. Over the years, I'd kept a folder of particularly painful family exchanges, partly as documentation and partly as a reminder to myself that I wasn't imagining things. I unmuted the call and began to read. Email from Mom, July 2019. Darling, while your promotion is certainly nice, we're all so excited about Sophia's new pottery hobby. She's found her real passion, unlike your job, which just seems so stressful and corporate. Email from Dad. September 2020. Lucas may have had another business setback, but at least he's taking risks and living authentically. Sometimes I worry that you're just chasing money and status with your career choices. Text from Mom after I helped pay for roof repairs. Thanks for the check. Wish you could contribute more than just money to the family. I continued reading examples for another minute before stopping. I have hundreds more like these. Small cuts delivered so casually you probably don't even remember sending them, but I felt every single one. The silence that followed was different this time, less defensive, more shocked. Ryan had returned during my reading and was now sitting beside me, his hand on my shoulder in silent support. I gestured to the phone, indicating he could speak if he wanted to. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, he said clearly. I've watched Claire agonize over your approval for 2 years now. I've seen her bend over backwards to help all of you, only to be criticized for her success or accused of not caring enough. From where I stand, she's shown nothing but generosity while receiving very little appreciation in return. You don't understand our family dynamics, my father began. I understand toxic dynamics perfectly well, Ryan replied evenly. I see them in my classroom every day between teenagers who haven't yet learned healthy communication. But you're adults. There's no excuse. My mother's voice came through, softer now. We've really treated you so badly, haven't we, Claire? It was the first genuine moment of reflection I'd heard from her in years. Yes, I answered simply. You have. I guess we got so used to you being the strong one, the successful one, she continued. We took it for granted that you didn't need the same support or recognition as Lucas and Sophia. Everyone needs recognition, Mom. Everyone needs to feel valued, I said. My father cleared his throat. I suppose we've been leaning on you financially more than we should have. It's just, you've always been so capable, so good with money. It seemed natural to turn to you when there were problems. There's a difference between occasionally helping family in genuine emergencies and being treated like the family ATM, I pointed out. When was the last time any of you offered to help me with something, even just emotionally? The silence that followed was answer enough. If we want to have any kind of relationship moving forward, things need to change, I continued. I need clear boundaries and mutual respect. I'm not asking for special treatment, just basic consideration. What exactly do you want from us? Lucas asked, his voice less hostile than before. For starters, a genuine apology, not just for the Christmas exclusion, but for years of taking me for granted. Second, no more financial requests without treating me as a full and equal family member. Third, respect for my relationship with Ryan and our future plans, and fourth, a repayment plan for at least some of the money I've loaned over the years that was never returned. That's a lot, my father said slowly. It's actually the bare minimum for a healthy relationship, I replied. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for basic respect. After some discussion among themselves, with the phone partially covered but still audible, my mother came back on the line. You're right, she said, her voice uncharacteristically humble. We haven't been fair to you, Claire. We've taken advantage of your success and generosity, and we've favored your siblings in ways that must have been very painful for you. It was the acknowledgement I'd been waiting years to hear. I felt tears forming but kept my voice steady. Thank you for saying that, Mom. As for the money, my father added, we can't repay everything at once, but we can start with a payment plan. And you're right that we should stop asking for financial help unless it's a true emergency. Lucas spoke up next. I shouldn't have expected you to sacrifice your wedding fund for my mistakes. That was wrong. And I'm sorry for the things I said about you being selfish. You've actually been the opposite. Even Sophia contributed a grudging apology. I guess I've been jealous of your success. It's easier to dismiss it than to admit you worked harder than I did to achieve your goals. We talked for over an hour, establishing new boundaries and expectations. There were still defensive moments and old patterns trying to reassert themselves, but for the first time, I felt like we were having an honest conversation instead of performing our usual family roles. By the end, we'd agreed to a fresh start. I would unfreeze their accounts, but remove my financial entanglement going forward. They would work on treating me with the same respect they gave each other. We would try family counseling, something I'd suggested years ago, only to be dismissed as dramatic. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Years of dysfunctional patterns wouldn't change overnight, but it was a beginning, a crack in the foundation of our toxic family system. As Ryan and I prepared to leave for the mountain cabin the next day, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd finally stood up for myself in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Whether our new family dynamic would last remained to be seen, but for the first time, I felt hope that genuine change might be possible. 6 months later, I stood in front of a full-length mirror in the bridal suite of a small countryside venue in Asheville, North Carolina, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at me. Not because of the white dress or the professional hair and makeup, but because of the peace in my eyes that had been absent for so long. 5 minutes, until showtime, my mother said, poking her head into the room. There was a gentleness in her voice that was still new to me, still surprising after years of critical comments and backhanded compliments. Thanks, Mom, I replied, smoothing down the front of my dress. How does everything look out there? Beautiful. Your father is pacing nervously, practicing his speech. He's determined not to mess this up. I smiled at that. In the months since our Christmas confrontation, my family had been making genuine efforts to change. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but consistently enough that I'd felt comfortable including them in our wedding day. Lucas had found a new job with better pay and stability, and had taken financial counseling sessions instead of looking for bailouts. Sophia and I had started having regular sister lunches where we actually talked about our lives without competition or judgment. And my parents had made good on their promise to start repaying some of the money I'd given them over the years, even if it was in small monthly installments. Most importantly, they had all welcomed Ryan into the family with real warmth, finally taking the time to know him as the remarkable man he was, rather than dismissing him for his modest teacher's salary. When my father walked me down the aisle, the speech he gave at the reception brought tears to my eyes. For too many years, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I failed to appreciate the incredible daughter right in front of me. I was so busy focusing on what I thought success should look like that I missed the most successful person in our family in every way that truly matters. Claire, your strength isn't just in your accomplishments, but in your capacity to love, even when it's not returned in kind. Your generosity isn't just financial, but in how you give people chances they may not deserve. Ryan is the luckiest man in the world today, but we're the luckiest family to have finally recognized the treasure we've had all along. It wasn't a fairy tale transformation. There were still moments when old patterns emerged, when a thoughtless comment would slip out, or when expectations would skew unfairly. But now, when those things happened, I had the confidence to address them directly instead of swallowing my hurt to keep the peace. And, surprisingly, my family was learning to listen. Lucas pulled me aside during the reception. "You know, I hated you a little when you froze those accounts at Christmas," he admitted. "But it was the wake-up call I needed. I've been leaning on you as a crutch instead of fixing my own problems. Tough love, I guess." "The toughest," I agreed. "But it was tough on me, too. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just couldn't keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm." Sophia and I had found our way to a real sisterhood, perhaps for the first time. "I think I resented how everything seemed to come easy for you," she told me during a bridesmaid prep session. "But I was only seeing the results, not the work you put in, not the sacrifices." "Nothing worthwhile comes easy," I'd replied. "Not careers, not relationships, not even family bonds. They all take work." My healing journey hadn't been instantaneous. In those first weeks after Christmas, I'd cycled through guilt, doubt, righteous anger, and sadness. Had I gone too far? Had I permanently damaged my family relationships? Was I the villain they'd initially painted me to be? Therapy helped. So did Ryan's unwavering support and the perspective of friends who had witnessed my family's treatment of me for years. Gradually, I came to understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish or vindictive, but necessary for healthy relationships. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people who have taken advantage of you is to stop enabling their behavior. That genuine reconciliation can only happen when both sides acknowledge the problem and commit to change. That forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue. Most importantly, I learned that my worth wasn't dependent on my family's recognition of it. I was valuable, lovable, and worthy of respect, whether they could see it or not. That realization freed me from the desperate need for their approval that had driven me for so long. As Ryan and I drove away from our wedding reception toward our honeymoon destination, tin cans rattling behind the car and "Just Married" written on the back window, I felt a sense of peace I'd been chasing my entire adult life. "Happy?" Ryan asked, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Completely," I answered truthfully. "Not because everything's perfect, but because I finally know my own worth." The Christmas confrontation had been painful, even traumatic in the moment. But looking back, I could see it as the necessary breaking point that led to healing. Sometimes relationships need to break before they can be rebuilt on healthier foundations. Sometimes you need to lose what you thought you wanted to gain what you truly need. When I think about freezing those accounts on Christmas Eve, I don't regret it. Not anymore. It wasn't about revenge, though there's no denying the momentary satisfaction it brought. It was about finally standing up and saying, "I deserve better than this. I deserve to be treated with the same love and respect I've given. I deserve to be valued for who I am, not just what I can provide." That was the gift I finally gave myself, and it has made all the difference. Have you ever had to take drastic action to be heard by someone who consistently took you for granted? Did it change your relationship for better or worse? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, Please give it a like and subscribe to hear more. Real life experiences. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most, but often they're the most necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's essential for your well-being and for creating healthy relationships that can truly last.